Here we are. Actually, March is our 1-year anniversary. Last year in March is when we started up. And it has been a year of a lot of discovery, exploration, trying the big macro conversations, trying to get to the micro, noticing that the micro conversation never got as micro as we actually needed it, right? So here we are. This is going to be us going totally hands-on, sitting here, scribbling the numbers, really coming out with a clear experience for our finances. And again, this is budgeting. There's many different aspects that we'll mention that we'll be able to get to in the future, but here we're just going to talk about basic budgeting. So before I go further, just a little overview. I didn't take one of these flyers of Carla Alesta. Can I use that one, Anne? So we were going to, last week because of the snowstorm, we had to reschedule Carla. Carla is going to come next month. This is in 3 weeks. It's happening very quickly. But she, you know, Carla just hosted 800 women from the local region in their big gala event. And they were honoring, I don't know how many, but a whole handful of women over their 70s who have made an incredible impact in this region with their lives as social change agents in the different ways as they see. The Women's Fund for Western Massachusetts donates incredible money to all kinds of initiatives that are looking to support advancement of women, the strengthening of women in all pockets around Western Massachusetts. And she hobnobs with the big players up and down in the big cities, you know, with Nova, I think it's called the Nova, you know, the Nova Foundation, which is the Buffetts, and again, Jennifer Buffett's mission to fund all of her billion-dollar endowment into supporting girls and women's empowerment around the globe. Again, looking at how philanthropy money can really source women's development, but she's coming here to talk really about nuts and bolts. How do we hold ourselves? How do we represent in a room? How does she do it? She says, anyway, I'm not going to give it away. She says all kinds of very cool things. And she wants us to come with 3 business cards, and she's going to really introduce us to kind of holding your own, which will set us up for then the next session, which is going to be our finale, the networking resource sharing session. So again, you're going to want to come prepared to that, to sell yourself, to represent what you do, to have your little elevator Toastmaster speech ready to go. Come with your cards, your paper, let people know what you're up to, and then we'll be able to file share, you know, what you're, find the resources that you need to help your mission, let people know what you're doing so they can find you, that whole kind of thing. That's what we're going to want to happen. And that's going to be May 21st, the 3rd week in May. And that will be our finale. Okay, so that's, yes? So April the 16th, yeah. Tuesday, will be Carla. Okay. That this will be coming up in 3 weeks, next month. And then May, the last month, will be May 21st, will be again Tuesday, 5:30 to 7:30. It's going to be the networking event. Okay. And I'm saying that part of kind of Carla is going to, without knowing it, kind of really prepare us to engage very powerfully, confidently, with her tips and her insights into that networking. So, you know, so rather than showing up like, oh, I'm getting ready to show, here was what I do, you know, we're going to be like, bring it on, here's what you know, ready to project and really generate powerfully and confidently what we're up to. Okay, so that's the overview. So now we're going to start getting hands-on. In this packet I gave you in the manila folder, there's all kinds of things, but we're going to kind of go in order. The first thing is the feedback survey, which I'm going to leave 5 minutes at the end for you to fill out. If you have to leave early, please fill it out. Take the time, take the 2 minutes to just fill it out and drop it into the little basket. Okay? So otherwise, if you're here for the whole time, then we'll have a couple of minutes to fill this out. Again, this is so valuable to us, and it lets us know that, you know, we learn from it, like Steve was saying. The next thing is the financial hierarchy of needs. So when I started out last March with all these financial advisors, Declan, Terry Webb, Melissa McGarity, everybody, I said, just, again, I'm not leading this because I'm a professional in money. I'm leading this because I get that we have a need and we're all interested and we all need to develop in this area. So I said, how do you understand, what's the diagram? Give me the visual diagram, right? So this is what they came up with. It's not an end-all be-all, but at the very top you'll see income distribution. 50% must-haves, 20% for savings, 30% for wants. This is Warren, Elizabeth Warren shares this resource. She has an amazing website that talks about real financial solid practices. And on here it does MDM proofing or something. I think I have it. So when it says Warren's must-have on number 1, it's referring to Elizabeth Warren. So she's our senator because she actually kicks butt in this area of really getting practical about what financial management means and really understanding basic healthy financial foundation that your average American needs to have. 50% must have, 20% savings, 30% wants. Is that realistic at this point in time? Probably not. Probably once we do the numbers and you run it, many of us will be somewhere up in 75 to 80% is what's covering our must-haves. You know, there's a 0 in the savings, and then we're trying to figure out how to deal with the want part, right? So by taking the time to do the budgeting work that we're going to do, it's about the light of illumination. Every single resource in all of this says that the first thing you have to do is know what you have and where it's going and how it's going, so that then you can start intentionally and consciously working with it, right? So this income distribution, it's an ideal and it's a place to maybe start to stretch and play with numbers. Some people say it's different, you know, but it's something to work with. So then we come down to number 1, which is what Warren says is the must-haves. It means any income, and it's what we use to cover the food, housing, utilities, the basics to make sure that we're surviving at a decent level. And that's mostly what we're going to be looking at in terms of the budgeting, where we'll start with the budgeting today as we start that practice. And then you come down, you see that the number 2 says, you know, the next level of foundation that's really important to have a secure base underneath you is a will, some kind of insurance. That might, if you have children, that's life insurance. If you have, you know, health insurance, of course, you know, and then you're working also with a set budget, that you've actually advanced yourself to where you have an actual budget and you're like, I spend this much on food every month and I stick with it. I put my savings account, this much into my savings account every month or every year, and I stick with it, right? You have a set budget. You actually have something that's actually working at that level. And the emergency fund, the all-pervasive emergency. How many people here, if you don't mind raising your hand, have an emergency fund? Great. And how many have 3 months of emergency fund? Okay. How many of 6 months of emergency fund? Right. Okay. So even every person that I talked to, including the financial advisor, was like, oh, that's an emergency fund, right? The idea of the emergency fund is that for those things, when something happens and the unpredictable happens, that you're not in a position where suddenly, as what happens to many people and that we hear happen on the news and everything, you have to move. You can't stay in your house. You have to go live in another area to go live with a relative. You have to cut kind of things that are part of your children's, the way of life, right? Suddenly, because you didn't imagine that your leg would completely do something crazy when you were doing something, getting out of the car or whatever, that suddenly you're in a compromised situation, having 6 months, or you lose your job, or, you know, 100 things, a million things that might happen, that having 3 months or 6 months where you can keep everything floating while you figure out and troubleshoot, versus being like, oh, everything falls out, right? That's the idea of the emergency fund. And that's why financial advisors and the whole economic community says they advocated for it so strongly, because they see how it compromises the stability of communities. Communities that have no emergency fund are very volatile. They are constantly having to respond to emergencies in a way that creates instability. That's the idea. So, and then number 3 comes down to pay down consumer debt and mortgage and increase your income a bit. So the first number 1, 2, and 3 are the foundation block. If that's handled, then you can get to the cool 4 and 5. Investing, and of course 5, which is like just orgasmic fantasy. You know, I fantasize about it all the time. I can't tell you all the different ways I configure that. But, you know, philanthropy, investing, totally independent. You're able to deeply engage in, all your time is your own to do as you wish, right? And you don't have that stress, tension, or you have the stress and tension, but it's not because of money. So, and then you have money to handle your stress and tension by using massage therapists and all these wonderful things, right? So this is the hierarchy, and this is kind of something to work with. We are going to start with looking at, and then the next 1, 2, 3, 4 sheets are all different budgeting sheets. Why did I put them all in there? Well, they all kind of lay it out in a different way. Maybe your mind likes one, maybe you like another one. Maybe there's some on some list that you want to have. So the way that we can play around with this, in this rubber budget book that you also got, is a whole bunch of blank pages. So you can use this for just some scratch sheets while you start to look and set up the budget. All right, so and Melissa was great. Melissa couldn't be here today, Melissa McGarity, one of our collaborators in this whole series. So she gave two copies of this budgeting challenge, the first one, because she said, well, you know, you kind of scratch one out, or you can save one for Xeroxing if you want. You can also go online, you can get sheets. You can, if you really love one of these and you just want to scratch it up right now, you can ask me and I can get you another copy of it so you have one to Xerox for a monthly thing. But basically, what you want to start doing is get a scratch sheet of paper, your budget, and we're going to start to do the work, clock in the numbers, write them in. Yes?
It's only 12 months in there, so if you're going to play around and use maybe the first month was January and February over.
Great. Or you can either use this as a scratch book, or if you decide you actually want to use this as your budgeting book, your 12 months, and you don't want to do anything in it right now, take one of these sheets of paper and use the back of it, get creative, you have something, right? So what the ideal that you want to start to do is to start looking at the expenses. The interesting thing about the budget is we start, and as you start to go in depth, it can be a little distressing and overwhelming, okay? Because generally we look at monthly expenses. This is my monthly expenses. So let's start. Everybody does everybody have a blank sheet that they can start scribbling on?
Is it
Yes.
just the fixed expenses, like what our car payment is, our rent, or
We're going to start with the fixed ones. And then we're going to also look at the annual ones, and then the ones that you know are coming. Like so let's start. If you look at first house, let's get a category called house. Okay? You want to look at everything that it takes to live in your home. So the first, that would be rent or mortgage. Electricity. Right? It could be your Time Warner for your cable.
so we're just making a list.
Yeah.
Just making a list now.
Yeah. Make a list.
There's one in here that looks like
So it's great because what you can do is also glance at some of these other ones if you want, but I'll kind of like look at some of them, and I'm going to just say some stuff out loud that might trigger your thoughts. But you also know some people, you know, have a landline telephone number and a cell phone. That's, you know, right? And the internet. And it might be a whole thing. You might even have cable television tied in with that, right? So there's electricity,
Water,
trash.
Lawn care.
That's exact. So if you're owning your home or you're responsible for it, there's the home care if you have monthly lawn mowing. Now, let's not get distracted yet by some of the seasonal stuff. Okay? So when you look at, like, these are the bills that come in every month. I know that they're going to come, and I know I'm going to pay for them. Kind of do those first.
Just for the monthly expenses?
For the monthly expenses.
So just across the top, you write house, on the side, you write electric and rent and all that, or you put it across the top? I'm just trying to figure out how.
Here, there's
Yeah.
one in here already done for you. It's like the fourth page in, that one.
Ah,
And then there's stuff on the back too.
Yep, front and back.
oh, so you can just fill in that.
You can fill that in. And then you can also, if you find that it's not complete, because this one's not going to be complete for you, you can write on the side. Again, it might be that this is you're doing your first draft of this right now, and when you go home, if you create a Word doc, right, and really lay it out, that will be very powerful for you, because you'll be able to then easily upgrade it and stuff like that.
So like my electric is more in the winter than it is in the summer. So you
So
just
average
add
out in a year.
Yeah. And for some people, they have more in the summer because they're into air conditioning. You know, it depends, right? You have a sense of what yours is.
Like the taxes, the yearly taxes, would that fit in under the house or?
So if
is
you,
that a separate tax?
great, so if you own your own home, then yes, you know that you have your taxes, real estate taxes. You also have the sewer and the water.
So you want us to fill in the amounts?
Yeah, that would be, that's ideal right now if you put those numbers in, because we want to do the math. Okay, so is there anything else around the house?
House insurance if you have. to.
Homeowners insurance?
Umbrella insurance.
Yep, the real estate tax, we
It's
said
not
that.
in the mortgage.
What's that?
My real estate's in my mortgage, so I just put it.
Eh,
well,
Yeah, exactly.
You have to pay it.
And some of you, yeah, exactly. Some of you might have your real estate taxes in your mortgage. That's the way mine was. But you don't have your water or your sewer in your mortgage, most likely. Okay, so there's the house, right? Again, you kind of plug those numbers into the best of your ability. They might be approximate, and you might go home and go get very, get much more specific, right? Then there's automobile, which is insurance, registration, the excise tax that comes in, that's right, 50 to 90.
Monthly. That's annual.
Right, so great. So there's going to be certain expenses that are annual expenses and certain expenses that are monthly expenses. So if it's an annual, maybe write it in a different column.
Or divided by 12.
Exactly. If you know, like for instance, I know my auto insurance $700 something a year. I know that number right now, and then once we pull out our calculators, boom, 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 you can divide that by 12. That's where the numbers start to. Well, no, it just means that oh, this is something to get clear about, to go look and see what it is,
Worry,
right?
happy.
Right.
But
Did
just
you
know
include
that
it
you're
with
going to
your
be.
home
No, I just got a new car recently, so it just changed.
Right.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
No idea what the budget fixes it. Figure it out. To go find it, go home and look it up.
Yes, exactly. So there you have a question mark, something that you're not clear about, right? Now, here's the other thing with auto insurance, with your automobile care, is there probably for those you're pretty clear about certain repairs that are going to be due. Like I actually know that within the year I have to get my timing belts changed, and that's $1,000 with a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen inside that engine. Right. You might know that your new tires are there, right? So to make your automobile actually have lasting value, you have to invest in it. You could also, you have a sense of oil changes. Could be, a couple times a year, 3 or 4 times a year at $40 a pop. It depends how much you're driving, right? 3,000 miles. So if you're just driving locally, you might not need it very many times.
Good exercise. This is where you figure in your gas.
So great, gas. How many people know how much you spend in gas? Approximately, right? Okay, so $200 a month, or it depends, right? But there's an approximate. I would say pretty much. I fill up my tank at least every 2 weeks, and that's maybe at 50. I'll say 50. It goes 40 to 60 bucks, right? And that doesn't account if I'm taking a trip to visit my mom in Boston. Then that's a round trip. That's almost a full tank of gas. So we're talking about another easy 60 bucks, right?
You gotta figure like 50 a week, I think.
So it
I fill up every week.
And then
Right.
how many drivers in your family?
Exactly, drivers in your family, and also if you're commuting back and forth up and down county, depending upon where you're coming from. So everybody has, but you have an approximate sense. You want to, and err on the upside. You just err on the upper.
Car wash?
The car wash after the winter and all that salt. That will tear your car apart. Okay, anything else that we can think of in the automobile section?
Tolls. Tolls. Parking.
Speeding tickets.
That will be savings. That will be in the. That'll be like okay. Yeah.
$200.
Ah.
Incredible.
Ugh. Killer.
For what?
I got a speeding ticket.
$200.
But I'm disputing it, I'm going to the court.
Good. Dispute away.
They'll make you pay to dispute now.
Okay, so then we come to another, again, we're talking, right now we're just covering the very basics so that you can have a manageable life to do what you need to do, right? We haven't even gotten into some of the other stuff, like health insurance, right? So you probably have a sense, either a monthly payment that you're doing for health insurance. So that needs a little section. And again, on one of the, like on the back of this one, it says typical cash expenses, prescription medical copay. And then there's, of course, groceries and food. I'd say this one is the one that can, right, fluctuate a lot. It depends on the season. Laura's here with Farm Girl Farm. So, if you do a CSA, then you have a sense of a chunk that you're putting in. Farmer's market starts. Depends when the winter comes, and we're going, all that kind of stuff. So a great way to start to get a sense of how much, it's a powerful practice to actually start to track how much you spend on food shopping to bring into the house. And you can do that with your debit card. Like if you make sure that on your debiting or bank card that where you go food shopping, that's always you're using your card so you can just track it. And I'm sure when we talk about QuickBooks and Quicken, which will happen in a little while, they'll talk about how that can be totally plugged into all of that. So it will manage it for you. But then to even come with some kind of a fixed budget. Okay, now I'm going to actually spend, it looks like I spend this range, but can I spend 600 or can I spend 5 or is it really 1,000? I mean, depends how many mouths you have to feed in your household, right? And there's that. You mean entertaining in your home? Yes, actually, I've experienced that.
I think gifts and Christmas, you have to budget out for the whole year.
Right, so,
Like, because at Christmas time comes and that's where all my money goes, you know, and I have no money because it's Christmas time, so in this, like knowing approximately what I'm gonna spend on Christmas and birthday gifts for the year, if I can put it into my monthly expenses.
Or you could have some savings account.
Yeah.
that automatically see it.
Yeah, I would know how much, so I think it's good to plan ahead.
yes. So, and before we start going into Christmas and also dining out and entertainment and movies and closing and beauty salons and all of that stuff, let's just stay focused with this is a must-have. If this is not handled, yeah, it's compromising a basic foundation of a quality of life, right? And for some of you on the automobile, you might go back, you might be doing car payments, right? Some people might be doing car payments, don't forget that. Okay, and then also you have, so again, this is a nice list, but all of these are kind of nice too, because there's also debt, right? Like Melissa's sheet on it, on the top is debt. They put debt.
What's the difference between that and your monthly credit card state?
Well, so a student loan is going to be a fixed amount that you're paying for ever. The credit card would be not a fixed amount, and that's going to be a big place to start to maximize and start to watch what are we really spending on, and why have that debt when you're paying such a high interest rate on stuff that goes onto the credit card. When it's an emergency, that might be necessary, but when it's not an emergency, is that a place for us to actually finesse our financial foundation? Okay, so does everybody pretty much have a list now of these basic fundamentals and a sense of how much those cost? Okay, so when you go, let's go back up into the home section, and let's look at some of the annual stuff that is easy to overlook, like heating. Do you have to heat your own home? Do you heat it with oil? Do you heat it with oil and wood? How many times do you fill up that tank approximately a year? Right? Just take a look right now and see if you know that, and if you don't know that, it's a great thing to go and find out. And again, it's hard to predict because oil prices are up and down, right? There was a year when it was, I don't know, $4, like, it was crazy, right? Even this year was very high. There was little pockets where if you got it at right, it came down at one point. So. Also wood, a cord of wood, if I don't know, I had a fireplace in my home, so we used a lot of wood, saved a lot of oil, but I knew I needed 4 cords of wood, right? So those run at...
Last winter was very warm.
Last winter was super warm, right?
It was almost double.
Right. So again, there's a little flexibility, but you can say approximately, is it maybe approximately $3,000, unless you're renting and heat is included, or you have electric heat or things like that. Anyway, you're looking at your heat is an annual thing. What else is an annual expense that is easy to forget about in the month when we're doing?
Well, if it's not included, your house insurance and your real estate taxes, those are annual.
Right.
Like my real estate taxes are in my mortgage payment.
Right. So to distinguish whether you're paying those or whether they're in the mortgage.
Life insurance?
So yeah, you can. I mean, let's skip around, just filling this out as full. Do you have life insurance?
Disability insurance?
If you have disability insurance, how much is that? Yeah, you had a question?
The house maintenance.
Yes. So then there's this house maintenance. So Laura was mentioning that, right? The mowing and the
Repairs, I mean. We need to stop the way we're paying.
yes, painting if that's something. There's, you know, we had, at my house, there was a black ant problem, so I had to hire Cat's Eye to handle this situation, and that was $75 a month. That's how that spread out, right? So, you know, do you have, what kind of things are you needing? We had the sump pump went out in the bottom of the basement. That was almost $1,000, right? So it's kind of thinking, if you own your home, will you have to get new appliances at a certain
And they
point?
have a lifespan and it keeps getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
Right.
Depending on the appliances.
Okay, so again, owning a home is very different than not owning it. Pros and cons on both sides. So let's look at some of these other annual expenses. You said life insurance, disability insurance. Any other larger annuals? We had the auto insurance was sort of an annual amount.
Medical expenses.
Medical expenses, I mean, so that should be probably life insurance,
Drugs.
your prescription drugs, if you know that you have that you're refilling and getting those handled. Your co-pays, if you see the doctor frequently, right? You have a $20 copay, maybe your $10 copay.
Summer camp for children.
Right, we haven't even got to the school and the kid thing yet. Right? So then we can go to that other category, which is education, children. So obviously, if you have children and you're raising children, they're included in your food budget. But then there's also the fact that they're growing constantly and they constantly need new clothes, you know. School supplies. And then there's tuition. If you send them to a private school, there's tuition. There's the summer camp, as you were saying, for summer care, so you can continue working. Doctor's visits, medical checkups.
Extracurricular activities for them.
Yes, after school stuff, the dance, the scream, everything.
School lunches they add up too.
School lunches. Okay, so do you have a sense of these numbers and a list? Is there a growing list? Okay. So, yes?
I just trying to, has anyone used like any of these things like Mint or any of those that you recommend?
Yes?
What was that? I bank with Berkshire Bank, and they have something called Finance Works, where if you plug in all of your investments, all of your credit cards, it pulls it in, and then, I didn't bring it today, but at the end of the year, I'll download it into a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and then, finish categorizing anything that hasn't been categorized.
Quick.
Great. So that's like Quicken,
Yes, it's like
right?
Yeah.
And also sort of like Mint.com.
That's good though. I mean, I found that, I don't know what Mint, I think it was Mint, one of the other outright I was trying, and Berkshire Bank didn't work with either of those. Like, it had some weird security thing, so that's interesting that they have that going.
I can't necessarily hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
If you could repeat it maybe? or-
Yeah, so if we can have a microphone, that would be great. Okay, great, Natalia, that would be awesome. And then also if you just speak up so that everybody in the back can hear. So who was it who couldn't hear? Yeah, so people were asking, what about programs like Mint.com?
What is that?
So Mint.com it's similar to Quicken or like Carol.
Which is through Berkshire Bank.
She says Finance Works from that Berkshire Bank has a program. They're programs where you plug everything in, and it gives you a graph. It gives you an outlay. It will let you know this is how much you spend in food. It will give you the actual expenses. And again, you're using your debit card for food. You're punching in, this is where I spend my food mostly. There's some tracking that that will be extraneous that you'll have to plug in. So the word is, and I was talking to Melissa about Mint.com. She said, and I think like most of these, such a pain to plug it in. Tedious and takes work, and like Berkshire Bank, I had the same problem. I couldn't get Mint to actually relate to Greylock. They wouldn't relate to each other, and I didn't then relate further to get the relationship going. And I think if Jan, when Jan comes, she'll be able to talk about Quicken, or somebody else will be able to talk about Quicken. Quicken sort of does the same thing, where you plug in all of your basic financial data, your expenses, where you're spending this, where you're spending that, you're tracking your bills in, and then you get a whole report basically at the end of the year. I think you can also get a monthly report. My guess is it would let you know if you're on track, right? Yes, Winona.
I was going to say, I used Mint for a while, and it was great, but it really does mean you have to, it's only as great as the information that you're putting into it, and it does, it actually did connect to, I had a Salisbury bank, and it connected to my bank, and it connected to all my credit cards, and all the information is right there, all of my expenses, all my payments coming due, everything, and it was so great. But if I didn't go in, there's all these unknowns, so I went to a new place that I didn't know yet. Once the place was in there, it would say that goes to that all the time. But if you go to a new place and it's not, it's uncategorized, and you have to categorize, put it in a category, and if you miss a month, it's a nightmare, and then you'll stop using it forever. So it's only as you have to stay so on it, just like with QuickBooks, until it really learns your habits, and then you just have to do a few things here and there. But in the first couple of months, you have to be really on it, and if you're not, then it just becomes a total jumble mess. So but it was great because I got pie charts and I got an accountant in QuickBooks.
Right, so you're using QuickBooks too. You're using QuickBooks.
Yep. I'm using QuickBooks now, but it's for my business.
Yeah. So that will be good, Natalia, to just give the microphone so we can actually hear.
But for those of us who don't know anything about QuickBooks or any of this, my.mint.com, what is it, purpose does it serve, and how does it help you?
Okay, great. So let's have Laura, Catherine, and even Winona talk about that. This is now the time we're going to jump in and hear them talk about it. And then we'll come back to calculating our numbers. Come on up, Laura. I'm shifting protocol, so we're going to come back to run our numbers. But we'll take a little break right now to talk about this since it's come up, okay?
A little QuickBooks advertising.
Yes. Right.
If I'm up front, do I need the mic?
Yes, you do.
I do. Oh, because you're recording. Okay. Well, I use QuickBooks for my business, and I don't use it for my personal yet, but I want to, because what it does is it's a history for me of what I've spent, and then from there I can make a budget in terms of what I will spend. So like a lot of these numbers we're talking about tonight, for my business, I have it so easily at hand for the last, I started in 2007, I think, with QuickBooks, and so I can see that, what's changed over the years. I can get an average that really helps me predict what's going to happen. But I think what it really helped me do was just to establish the concept that Maya mentioned of, in terms of setting goals about where I wanted to be. I had no idea where I was. And I still feel a little bit of resistance to really knowing where I am in my personal finances, but for my business, I was able to have a little less, emotional connection to it and put all the numbers in and see where I'm going, and from there, make decisions. So if I'm really keeping track of things, and what Winona said, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. It's almost like QuickBooks is a financial advisor, because I put everything in as I'm going along, but I don't have the big picture in my head. I'm just putting in the data like a little worker bee, and then at the end of the week or month or year, I can say, well, what really happened? It's not just how I feel about what happened, but what really happened. How many tomatoes did I sell to that restaurant that's 30 miles away versus the restaurant that's 5 miles away, and should I keep selling to that restaurant that's 30 miles away? Is it worth it? And so that's what, I don't have to go back and redo everything at that moment. It's already in there. So for me, I feel like QuickBooks is actually like another team member, another employee. it's holding all this information that I don't have to keep in my head all the time.
But with
Yeah.
your business,
Yeah.
what's the difference in doing that and just at the end of the year doing your, you do your end of the
Because
year?
I want to stay on track. So I set goals, weekly and monthly and annual sales goals. So it actually really keeps me, if I keep my budget open and I see where I am compared to my budget every day and every week, then I can say, oh my gosh, I kind of lost track. I need to make a few more phone calls. I need to try to sell some more carrots. Or I have to hold off another week on buying boxes because I budgeted this, this, and this. And it also helps me a lot in terms of keeping track of who's paid me and who hasn't paid me. So, it's like, I thought I would have more money now. I feel like where is it? And then I can look and see, these people actually owe me over 90 days ago, make a phone call, they forgot, they lost the invoice. It just keeps everything really tight. And when you're in a business like growing vegetables or any small business, you can't really afford things to be loose. And that's been another really important, QuickBooks has been a really important tool in helping me keep everything tight. And having, the thing that I've learned about the money as well, slowly, I was not a business person at all, is it's one thing, having it, making the money is one thing, but when you get the money is a huge thing. And so if you don't get paid on time and you're borrowing money or putting something, buying things on a credit card and 18% interest when somebody actually owes you that same money, you're lending it to them for nothing, So QuickBooks really helps me see all that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and good, we'll have,
just wanna
add in Catherine.
Who asked that question about instead of doing it at the end of the year? Okay. What's really good about paying attention, and it's really not a complicated situation, and as far as putting your business on QuickBooks or Quicken, either one, good thing about QuickBooks is it's a lot more detailed, and you can invoice customers from it, so that's a good advantage. But I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the old one-write system, right? Where you do everything. It's similar to that, but you can, yeah. But this you can see what money you have. Well, even on the one-write system you can, but it's good to have it on a computer because you can do all these reports from it. You can do how much money you spent in this month. I mean, I know that you can with the one-write system also, but you can do all kinds of different reports for banks or for, if you want to put yourself together and go for a loan. You have it all right there at your fingertips. So it is similar to that, and it probably takes about the same kind of time. But to have it on the computer is, I think it's better for me. And, it's just lots of paper around and stuff like that.
Catherine, will you just tell us the difference between QuickBooks and Quicken?
Well, the QuickBooks is more for business, and Quicken is more for your personal use, but they run the same way. So if you learn one, it's easy to learn the other. And I was thinking about this on my way here because QuickBooks is really expensive, but like the most people always buy the newest version. Well, you know what? The 2010 version works just as well. It's just not as fancy. And if you want to start somewhere, you can go on eBay and get an older version of it and start there,
About how much would that cost, do you think?
Well, I didn't go and check, but I think an older version would be probably 1/3 of what a new version would be.
Which is about?
I think it's about $300 for a new version.
You can also get it online. I do mine online, which is for a business, is $20 a month, but there's lower if you don't need the type of processes. So then it's a monthly expense rather than a big chunk expense, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
And you can write it off at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you can write it off
You
no
can
matter,
write this
yeah.
stuff off too, yeah.
But I mean, for me, I don't trust giving all my information onto a computer. I'm a little old-fashioned that way. I haven't gotten to the smartphones and all that. I'm too afraid of them, like to put all my personal information and all my credit card and all that on a.
You're not alone. There are a lot of
I mean,
people
that for
do
me
that.
is hard. I mean, I'm waiting for one of you young people to teach me that, but.
Well,
Anyway, I do, by the way, I have a business card if anybody wants. I'm an office manager service, and I know how to set up QuickBooks and Quicken. So if anybody needs help with that, I'm willing to help.
Right, we're going to do a sign up for that in a little bit. So different options to use QuickBooks for your business or Quicken for your personal financial management, which is you can either do a $20 a month online setup, or you can purchase it new for maybe something $299, $300, something like that. Does that sound right to you, Laura? And then, or you can get maybe 2010 version on eBay and maybe get it for $100 or something like that. You think, Catherine, something in that ballpark?
Yeah, I think, eBay or something.
Yeah.
The older versions would probably be really cheap.
Right. So an investment into this tool that for if you're running a small business, I think sounds completely brilliant. And like I said, what we'll do is, so Catherine, Laura, and Jan Foos responded to my request that people who have skills in this area let me know so we can utilize them. And they are generously and ready to support the mission of the ladies in the region by offering super amazing, mega discounted support. So the way Laura was thinking about it, and again, we'll play around, we'll see how many of you want this as a support, as a tutorial, but it could be like everybody would get together in a group session with Laura, Jan, and Catherine and just talk about how to get yourself the basics, and then you would take a couple of hours privately with one of the three of them to tutor, to get your specific business, because your specific business needs to have its own mapping in there, right? And so they would walk you through that, and then we could have, again, another group party on the other end in which everybody's just plugging in their data so that, drink wine, plug in your data, have some fun about it so that it's not so tedious, right? Because that's the tedious part. And that something like, I don't know, we were talking about $20, an hour, or $20 for the group session, and then like $25 or something for your private tutorial, something like that, something very reasonable versus paying somebody $500 to $1,000 to set up the system for you that you don't even quite know how to run yourself. Exactly, something like that. So it's a win-win. They get to start sharing their expertise and see, oh, maybe I can be a QuickBooks tutor, and you all can benefit by having the support and the expertise of their self-taught know-how to get that resource. Okay. So at the very end, I have a sign-up sheet. If you want to do that, if you're interested in participating in that, you're going to be able to sign up for that. Okay? So, back to the numbers. Yes, Laura?
I just wanted to say that some people have very simple businesses, like I do. I don't have a ton of clients or a lot of billing or any of that kind of stuff. I do it all in Excel. I bought the suite, Microsoft Office, and that's it. Everybody needs Word, so it didn't cost me anything, in other words. And so I don't get fancy charts, and maybe I probably could if I knew Excel better, but it's fine for what I do. So not everybody has to go with fancy.
How does that work?
So can you come up and talk to us, Laura, about Excel, how you use Excel? Great.
First of all, I am not your financial guru at all. But at the end of the year, I go through the torture of putting my year back together again. And I have tabs. Are you familiar enough with Excel to understand that there are different tabs? And each tab is an expense, a type of expense. And again, it's very simple what I do. One client is 3 months worth of work, and they get 2 bills. So what I do probably doesn't apply to a lot of people in the room. But just each tab is a different kind of expense. It comes to, it's linked to the cover page. I give all of that to my accountant to do my taxes because I screwed that up once and I don't want to do that again. And it's pretty simple.
Can you make invoices in Excel?
I don't know, I just do it in Word because, like I say, I do it so infrequently. I don't have to have super fancy systems to do what I do.
You can use formats that you would plug the numbers in and they would self-total, but it's a little bit messy. It's a little messy, but know large businesses that are operating on Excel.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well.
They do QuickBooks kind of off on the side, but so they can see everything exactly on one page, and they love it. And you can get Excel for Dummies. It's a great book.
Right.
Okay, so if you can speak up, Winona. So you can get Excel for Dummies, she says, and also she says she knows large companies that use Excel. It's very basic. You want to just reiterate what you said?
Excel is just it's a program. It's in the Office suite that you can get for Mac or PC, and it's basically you plug in the numbers and it totals everything for you, so that you don't have to sit there with a calculator and everything. You have to make sure that your formulas all work out. But I know one large business in particular that's how they like to do their bookkeeping, so that they can see everything. Because if you can't, kind of in QuickBooks, it disappears. You can't see everything that you're looking at. So for some people that like to see exactly what all their expenses are and kind of tweak it here and there, it's really useful. And there's a great book called Excel for Dummies that can teach you how to use Excel. And I use it for everything.
And it's free?
Well, you have to buy this suite. You have to buy the Office suite. And I can't remember how. I think it was like $100. But if you could get somebody else to go in on it with you, you can get like a family pack or a group pack, and a couple people can use it. But then you get all the Word done.
So it's basically a one-time fee, though?
Yeah. And it might even be on your computer already.
Yeah, if you have a computer at work.
Yeah, it should have it on there. Okay, so different resources for using the computer to help you be on top of what's happening in your finances. And again, there's business. And again, I think in the early fall, we'll have a whole business management session to do business accounting, have all different kinds of resources. And right now, we're kind of focusing a little bit more on our personal budget. So let's come back to these numbers that you started to plug in. And does everybody have a calculator, or are they great at math, or do they have an iPhone? iPhones are great.
Yeah, so you just add up.
So just add it up. So if you have, when you look at the annual stuff, if you divide it by 12, that will help you. You just make it, take your, if you have your annual in one column, you have all your monthly things in one column. Take the annual ones, divide it by 12, move it over to the monthly. I hear it. Right, and again, this is going to be sort of broad, but what we want to do is actually start to look at how much can be saved. Right. This is we are trying, we want to get a basic overview right now, which you can then take and go much more in-depth at home as you set up your stuff. And you know what, I see, Eve, before you go, I just wanted to also introduce Eve to you all. So one of the things is a will. As number 2, it's a foundational thing, especially if you have children or you have any kind of assets. What I understand from Eve and other lawyers is that if you don't have a will and you pass away, everything goes into some crazy probate thing where it takes tons of energy and time and nobody can have what they need because it goes into probate. You want to say something?
If you don't have a will, it's considered intestate, which means you don't have a will. And there are certain rules about intestate, so whatever your personal desires might be, they would not be honored necessarily depending on the intestate laws of Massachusetts. So if you have children, if you own real estate, if you have resources, and you have an idea of how you'd like that real estate and resources to be bequeathed, it's really important to have a will. If you have young children, you might want a trust attached to the will, which will hold those resources until the children are old enough to know how to manage having their own money. So I did leave, I'm so sorry I have to leave. This is so interesting, but I did have a previous engagement. I do have some cards on the back table. Please feel free to take one and to give me a call if you have any questions about wills and trusts, power of attorney, and medical proxies. Those are important documents also. Basically, what they mean is for any reason, if you cannot manage your own financial affairs, or if you're unable to make your own medical decisions because you're ill, for example, or unconscious, you have documents in place that authorize specific people to be entrusted with those very important powers. So, it's all part of taking care of things,
Right.
taking care of your life and your loved ones.
Approximately how much does a standard basic will cost?
That's an interesting question because I rarely do a will on its own, standing alone. Usually it's the 3 documents.
You can just type up what you want and sign it, can't you?
I would have to say no to that because there are certain rules about what a legitimate will is. And if your document that you write and sign doesn't comply with the rules in the Commonwealth, then it's not considered a real will. So I would suggest before you do something like that, that you call a lawyer and talk about what you want to do and make sure what you're doing would be considered valid. If you have a will, that's
You can go online and get a will too, I've done that.
okay.
Download one.
There are resources out there to get a will online, and that may be good in some circumstances. What that won't do is take into account what your personal wealth is and what your personal needs are. So again, I would encourage you, before you take a shortcut like that, speak with a lawyer beforehand, myself or someone else, so you can be ensured that you're making the decision that's right for you and that's right for your family based on what your wishes are. You don't want to be, you don't want to disappoint your family that way.
And you had said, or we had inspired,
Yes.
that if you were part of the series and you want to use a lawyer to do a will, you don't want to just do it on your own, but you can do it online, but if you want to use a lawyer, and Eve is willing to give a 10% discount for anybody who participates in this series.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am, and if you just want a will, I can work with that if you don't want the 3 documents. So if you're curious, just give a call. It's a will, power of attorney, and a medical proxy. Those are the 3 standard documents that generally go together.
And how much do those? She said it's
A will with a trust and the power of attorney and the medical proxy is around $650. I do have a sliding scale for depending on what people's resources are and what they want done. So that's a general framework. So, between $450 and $650 depending on what you want. Yes?
supplemental trust fund?
Yes, that's really important.
So that would be, that's a separate.
What is that?
Well, there are all kinds of trusts. If you happen to have a child who has a disability, for example, or other situations involving family members where you want to make sure that they're taken care of in a certain way, there are a variety of different types of trusts that will specifically address those issues.
There's also, if I understand correctly, in the case of divorce, like life insurance that needs to be entrusted to cover child support, those kinds of things. So once you're in a divorce situation, everything gets very complicated, and you need to make sure that those things are accounted for. So that's another, like a way to create a trust, or that the life insurance would go into a trust for my child, wouldn't go to the ex, that kind of thing. Right?
Also, if you have a will and life insurance and you're divorced, you want to revisit those documents.
Right.
You definitely want to revisit those documents. And in terms of supporting women's wealth, I found that divorce, separation agreements, contracts, people who owe them money, all of these things. You know, getting money from people who owe you money in your business, debt collection, all of these things add up that can make an interesting difference in women's wealth. And these are legal matters as well as business matters. So I practice in those areas as well. So if you need support with that, again, I have some cards on the table.
Where do you practice?
Pardon?
Where do you practice?
Right here in Great Barrington. Yes. Thank you.
Great. Eve, will you put the cards on the front table so as people
I
walk
will
out?
move them on my way out.
Great.
Be on the front table.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Eve.
I just wanted to say that my brother died a few years ago, and it was a different state, but he had a handwritten will, and it wasn't notarized, and he was intestate, and the money that he had ended up going not the way he intended it to be. And it went to my mother instead of to me, which was fine because I have a good relationship and everything, but she didn't want more money in her estate, and so it just created problems. So it is important that, you know, I don't know what the Massachusetts laws are, but, you know, it is important to find out exactly what you need.
Okay, thank you. All right, so back to crunching some numbers. So again, as you were saying, Laura, by shining the light of illumination to get to know what's going on, this is going to allow us the flexibility and adaptability to start to build the healthy foundation. So one of the things last year when I was meeting with all these financial advisors, and I talked to Declan, who had done all kinds of work in financial institutions with setting up retirement accounts and everything. And he said, and it's pretty consistent out there, that it doesn't matter. The difference between somebody who has a lot of money and somebody who has little amount of money doesn't matter when you're oblivious to what's going on. That there are many people who have a lot of money who are living month to month. They have no foundation, they have no savings, they're living big fancy mortgages and car payments and everything that's part of this expected income, and then boom, something happens, and suddenly that income is no longer there, and the whole thing, whoop, there goes the house, there goes there's no foundation there. And yet, and he told me this story of this beautiful couple that had the basic income. They worked really hard, but they were so smart with their money that by the time they retired, they had like all kinds of investments and stability, and they had this beautiful retirement. And again, so it wasn't necessarily this, we can think that you have to have lots of money to create this foundation. It's more how you work the money. And even I attached this interesting article, and there's a couple other articles that you'll see past these when you get further into this little package, like how to increase your household cash flow, how can I reduce my spending, how to establishing a financial safety net. So if you take the time to read that, it'll help you, inspire you when you get home to really do this work. And I got this off of the Time Internet, Time Magazine, this article called Why Financial Literacy Fails. And it's talking about, again, the power to save, to understand how to be frugal in a very savvy way so that we can actually build up savings. And the articles, just to take a read, see if it does something for you. I found it very inspiring just to say, again, the way that we save makes all the difference in creating a stable financial ground under our feet. Yes?
My big question is, this is always a big question for me. If I have debt, which I do,
Yes?
do I pay down the debt before I save? Last year I made a real concerted effort to knock down my debt, and I did a really good job, except now I have no savings, because I took some of my savings and
Right.
killed my chunk. I still have other debt, like a car payment now, because I needed a new car.
Right.
So now I have a new car and I have a car payment, but tell me, do I pay myself before I pay Discover Card?
all the money that you gave on the debt, you should be paying yourself now, because you got rid of the debt. So that money that you were paying off your debt every month, you should be putting back into your
I
savings.
still have other debt and I have knocked out other things, but I'm still not, I don't feel quite there.
Natalia, what do you think?
What's the answer to that?
Well, you see the debt on the credit card because the interest rate is so big. So sometimes it's, you have to pay the debt first to get rid of it. Otherwise you pay 20,
Exactly,
20%.
so how do I save?
So David Michaels, when he gave a presentation on budgeting last year, talked just about this and about the balance and looking at the numbers and how important it is to decrease the debt, but also you need to have something, because I mean, to have no back cash behind you means you're totally insolvent at any, means you go right back into debt, right? Yeah, what were you going to say, Serene?
I have learned through a lot of finance classes that there's good debt and there's bad debt. So credit cards are bad debt because your interest rates are high. Good debt is when your interest rates are lower than what if you were to take that money and invest it in the market. So if the market's returning 5%, let's say on average, a mortgage right now at 3% is good debt because you could take the difference that you would be spending by paying down your home mortgage and you can be investing in the market and you could be 2% further ahead. So those are the kind of like auto loans. Auto loans can be variable. Sometimes an auto loan can be at 1%. And that's pretty much, that's good debt. If you were going to take $30,000, $40,000 and buy a car, if you took that money and invested it in the market but then took a loan, you could be making the difference up depending on what percentage you're saving versus what you're spending on interest.
Great, thank
I have
you.
a theory,
Yeah?
a game that I play with myself on that one is with the credit card debt. My credit card debt is not huge, but I have a certain amount of credit card debt because it keeps me in line. Because I know that if I have a little bit of credit card debt, I'm not going to go too far over. But if I have no credit card debt, I'm going to be inclined to use my credit card. And it works for me.
The games we play. This is good. This kind of so
it works for me.
we're coming to we're at 6:50, right? So either we can take some time and you can do your math now and actually come up with a sense of how much could you possibly save per month, or you can wait and do that at home and we can actually talk about savings and have this discussion about savings and the challenge that it is. Because for us as women, it's a particular situation, but also for human beings, it's a particular situation.
I vote for continuing the conversation.
Okay, since we're here talking. Okay, so the basic idea of running these numbers and doing all of that and taking the time when you're home or getting some girlfriends and doing it or signing up, because we'll see if you want to create little circles, and Winona's going to talk to us about her little support circle, and there's a way to create circles to do this, is to actually start to crunch your numbers so that you can come up with how much can you possibly save. And how much can you save so that you can build this emergency fund? How much can you save so that you can pay off the bad debt, bring that credit card debt down to something that keeps you in line?
I pay off $10,000 of debt and I paid off $9,000.
Okay, that's awesome.
I was like, I didn't mean like
That's great.
very close, but I don't have that debt right now.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying. I feel like I'm a sledgehammer kind of chopping away at it, but I have no savings.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Once you crunch these numbers, if all of us were to just talk transparently about our finances, which we don't need to do right now, but most likely, it's going to take how much you're actually able to save per month is going to, when you look at saving up a 6-month emergency fund, you're going to go, it's going to take me 3 years to create my emergency fund. Oh my God, this is depressing, right? So, and that's not even paying off the debt included.
That was my emergency fund.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah, but
So now you're building back up.
You don't have all those high interest rates, and so
Right.
your better off.
I am making more money because I'm not paying.
Right, and if you have 10,000, you paid off $10,000.
9,000. I
Okay,
tried
if you
to
paid
tell
off 9, then you have $9,000 in somewhere that you can put it back.
You can borrow it again.
My car died
Okay.
at Christmas and I had to buy it.
Yeah, but you'd have more, you'd have more debt if you hadn't done that. You paid $800 a month off in debt.
You have your car payment plus the.
So if your car payment is $600 and you paid off $800, you got $200 a month that you can stash. You just have
Those
to,
are, yeah.
if you do this paperwork here, it will
Well, I
really
already
help.
did, and I
Yeah.
know what my monthly nut is, and I'm not meeting it, so I don't know how I did that. I was, you know, I looked at what I have in and what's going out, it's scary, I don't want to look at it.
Right,
I'm afraid,
right.
I know
Well,
it is. I can
yeah.
see the numbers, I'm terrified.
Credit card debt is very tricky because it's really tied to your rating. And if you don't borrow, your rating goes down. So you have to, even if you have dormant cards, it's recommended that you charge
Well, your car payment is.
something every month just to keep your rating down so that when you do have to borrow a car payment, the bank looks up the rating and it will affect your payment.
So
It's really.
we're holding a very complex situation, right? First of all, the economy is totally different than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago.
10 years ago.
Even 10 years ago. 6 months ago. But just, you know, think of a lot of financial practices are based on a really old school model from the 50s and 60s when we can look at our grandparents who had a same job maybe for 30 years. Their retirement setting was all set up for them. When they retired, that they just got that you could, with half of your monthly income, get all of your, you know, pay your mortgage and all your basic food, the way the expenses. How many, you know, you go into these old-fashioned houses and you see these mini closets, right? Because everybody had 3 outfits, one for Sunday, one for work, and one for summer and winter. You know, it was very simple. And now we have the cable and the internet and the cell phone and the car payment and and these are just the basics to like be operable in the world. And then there's the QuickBooks, you know, getting this and all of this, right? So there's our expenses to just be participating in current culture are very high, right? And then here's the doozy. We also have now come into, since the 50s, and there are some incredible exposés and films on this topic, which was the invention of the consumer mindset, the invention of advertising, compelling advertising. So now, and we as women can look at what we're just bombarded with, you know, what you need to spend money on so that you are sufficient, so that you feel good. You know, and there's this whole I deserve it thing, right? I deserve it. And whether it's the nail salon, and everybody has their own little niche, right? I was talking to Melissa and she was saying, you know, for her, she's really got it very down to, she doesn't go and do all this other stuff. She doesn't need more clothes. She doesn't, all of that stuff's been handled. But for her food, if she budgets and gets too frugal and stops spending nicely on her food budget, she feels like she's just poverty-stricken and it's not worth it and she just wants to give up. So there's this weird dichotomy between how do you balance, you know, what is actually being fed to us and just get that out of our, you know, stop being influenced by things we don't actually need. And how do we also practice frugality but feel that we're amply enjoying our lives and we're, you know, prosperously engaging in life itself. So this is a delicate balance, and in all of that, we're trying to take this very finite month-to-month income and somehow find a way to save, right? So this is, and you know, I'll go up and down, and Declan used to talk all about this, you know, Starbucks coffees, and you know, if you make your coffee every single day and not go out to the cafe, you know, you will save, I don't know, something like $700 something a year. It's some astronomical number. And then, of course, I think about our local cafe owners who are going, yes, but the cafe culture is a wonderful thing, right? So it's, you know, and everybody has to navigate.
And there's the emotional component behind everything.
Yes, so this is what we're talking about, is how to distinguish between real wants and needs.
Everybody, it's different for everyone.
Yes. Can you want to say more about that?
Well, it's very individual.
Go out and socialize.
Yeah, you want to say more?
Everyone has different needs and desires, and so that all plays into it.
Right, so how do we start desiring to save? This is the question. This is, yes.
Well, I think it's, well, I'll just give you a little preface. About 3 years ago, I decided I was going to change my entire life, as you know.
Yeah.
But one of the components of it was I wanted to master money. I realized that actually money had always rather terrified me. Money would come into my life, money would go, and I actually had a very perverted relationship to money. So firstly, my task was to really understand and like money, because then I became less scared of it. That emotional sort of relationship to money then allowed me to really look at money and say, why am I spending, what do I want to spend money on? And I began to understand that so much of my spending habits were based on the excess of life. So the question was, how can I become more content with less? So as you know, I moved to Great Barrington and moved from my big house in Williamstown, and I live in a studio apartment run by the fabulous Jenny Clark, who's the fabulous landlady. But the first thing when I came to my one room, I have one room, one bathroom, one porch, one kitchen. It's small. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, here I am. But then I looked at this place and I said, this is a new world for me. I'm going to call my apartment the Jewel Box. So by giving it a name that's appealing, I began to feel very much like I'm living in a jewel box. It had 2 closets, so I couldn't go running around buying more clothes. So little by little, I began to really honor and celebrate the fact that my life now is so essential. Everything in the jewel box appeals to me. I love it. There is no excess, right? It was a mindset shift that allowed me to now look at savings. So savings is my way to pay myself. It's tithing to myself, loving myself enough to say, you know what, 10% of my paycheck, I don't have a paycheck, I'm self-employed. That's the scary part of this whole thing. There is no predictability to a month, there is no monthly income, you know, and so that's scary. But even in that thing, I now say I tithe 10% and put it into my savings account. Suddenly, I love money. And because I love money, it's going to becoming more and more. I'm completely convinced of that sense that the prosperity consciousness is exactly what's going to make it flow. Even if today you don't have very much, but it's the mindset that is allowing you to experience yourself as a prosperous, wealthy person, and then take the steps as you're showing us to create the foundations for great prosperity. So that's my little, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, Amber, I mean, I've experienced that myself. Last year when we started this series, I was like, oh my gosh, well, I really have to start saving because I'm, standing in front of all these women. And I noticed that as I start to really make those choices, to take that money and rather needing that beautiful pair of shoes or not wanting to cook dinner or something, taking that chunk of money and putting it and seeing that money build up, there was something, I felt very, much more grounded and confident. Yeah? Very empowered, thank you, the key word, empowered. So there is an interesting thing that happens when you start to actually start looking at, right, when I pay myself and build up the savings account, I'm making a pile of money. A pile of money can do things. If you don't have a pile of money, you can't do things with it. So it's about how to create that pile as being a very tantalizing thing more tantalizing than certain immediate gratifications, and how to also shift and say, you know, I've gotten very good at telling people, you know, oh, they say, oh, you want to go out to dinner? I say, well, I'm practicing extreme frugality, but let's do a potluck. And suddenly you have a potluck rather than needing to host everybody and do a big banquet. You say, let's do potluck. Everybody brings a dish. It's beautiful. It's festive. You know, it's part of a new way of just being everybody, you know, the stone soup. Right? And then also consignment shops with children, you know, for clothes. I haven't gone and spent well, barely spent new clothes on my daughter, but the recycling culture that's really part of our area here, you know, and keeping it local. Yes, what did you want to say?
Oh, I share with her the fear of money and now feeling really good about it. And I also liked what you added to it. And I was going to add that I would have a hard time. Yes, I wanted to see the savings account grow, and you'd see the figure, and you're looking at it every month. And it bugs you in the back that you might spend it, you know, somewhere because you know you have it. So I take envelopes and I tape one to the back of my refrigerator, and I tape one to my dryer, and I tape, you know, and I have one in my car.
What's your address?
And you know, I just put it in various places of the house that mean something to me, like you know, I could put one in the attic because I know someday I'm going to need a roof. So when I have money, whether it's an extra $1 or an extra 10 or 100, I go around and I stick them in these envelopes because your savings account's not giving you any money.
Right.
So I don't really.
It's great to tell anyone that I have cash savings in my house.
Yeah, but you know.
Just don't put it in your mattress.
No, but it's like I know I'm going to need a new washing machine soon. I already got the dryer. So, you know, I have my washing machine envelope. And because I tried to do it on a spreadsheet where you designate it, and then there's still the big total on the bottom. And that's okay for a certain savings account for whatever, but like it just feels good sometimes when I forget where I put some money, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a blessing because my homeowner's insurance is due this month, you know, and it's like, wow, okay, that's because I'm self-employed, so it's like, oh, that's where the money's coming from. I found it in the, you know. So the old envelope system, but I hide it.
The old, that's the coffee can, right? In the coffee, in the, yeah. What, you wanted to say something, Carol?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, that's right.
I hate to be a spoil sport, but you know, the thought of having a fire.
Yeah,
or a robbery,
exactly.
And this, I mean, even if you don't earn money in a savings account, if you kind of make a list of all the things you need to save for and have a separate account or put it in a sub-account. In what?
You can have sub-accounts in your savings.
Yeah, but that's all.
You can put it in a safe deposit box too. It costs about,
That's right.
Pittsfield Co-op, it's $25 for the year.
Yeah, but if it makes you save, and yeah, there could be a fire and lots of things could happen, but if you're saving.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I save that those ways too, but I'm diversified. It's fun. Diversified. It makes it work, and I don't attack for you. Yeah, and I don't attack the one lump sum frivolously.
Sharon, what do you want to say?
I make good use of the bank, you know, that I can have several accounts. And so if there's a project that I know I want to save for, or if it's even, you know, my own retirement I want to save for, and it'll do I can set it up, the bank, it'll do an automatic deduction from my checking account and go to some other account. That gets just done. We have found, my husband and I, the best help with just not ever seeing it. You know, it just gets automatically sent to some other account, and we don't touch that other account. And then eventually, you know, it gets to be where we want. Now we haven't quite done it. He has a company. He works for a company where he has his retirement. I am now realizing that, you know, even though hopefully we'll be retiring together, I need to build up mine, and so I'm here for that. But so I want to start thinking about that because I have my own bank account. I can create an account and just start just paying myself, as you say, it just goes there like every other bill that gets sort of paid automatically. I can do it that for myself. So I'm a big believer in making it easy and making it automatic and not having to think about it and not ever seeing it.
And it's great. It's almost like what you're saying, and a lot of time, a couple different speakers throughout the year have said this, which is this idea of paying yourself first. So actually making the savings one of the primary places, and then when you have to cut, it might be, oh, you know, no, I'm not going to go out and see that movie. Let's all have popcorn here at my house and watch Netflix. Or, you know, whatever it is that there's that having that build up becomes a source of gratification because you're actually building towards something else. And it's interesting because, and again, there's this how to balance the deprivation versus you know, healthy frugality, right? Which is, you know, when we don't want to deprive ourselves, but at the same time, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, but again, time. Money is also time. So, you know, when you go spend $50 on, you know, the outfit or something, that's, oh, how much is that time? What does that time allow you to do? How do you want to relate to that time? Is that actually time that will give you to be writing that book or whatever the project is that you have that needs your time, right? So the more, when you say paying yourself, it's brilliant. It's like you're paying so that you can be actively engaged in the things that you want to be engaged in versus possibly, you know, having an emotional spending moment, something, you know, like, oh, I'm feeling kind of blue, I need, and again, sometimes that's important, right? So how to have all of those things going on at the same time. The biggest point, though, is that, and again, we didn't actually take the time to run the numbers. I see some people are doing it right now, which is great. But to actually sit and run the numbers, because that, without having that clear information, you will not have the numbers that you know you need to be working with. When you know, oh, I can actually spend $150, or I need to put a savings account that has these annual expenses that saves for heating so I'm not surprised and then suddenly dipping in. Or I need to have these, like you were saying, maybe it was you, Winona, or somebody, sub savings accounts in your bank account. One where you don't touch it. This is the no touch. This is the saving emergency fund thing that's going to happen. And then these are my annual things that are getting saved up for. That without a clear budget that takes into account all the kinds of stuff that is easy to forget about, like that car repair, you know, like you are doing, you're anticipating, I know my washer is having a problem, I'm going to have to get a new one. Without that clarity, then we're in disarray with our finances. And if there's disarray, then you actually cannot be a master of your money. So this is about mastery and managing it in a very powerful way. And what else did there was something.
And it's never too late to start.
Yeah, and it's never too late. That was a big thing that Declan was saying over at the end of at one of the sessions. He was like, there's this idea that if you haven't gotten started yet, that you oh, forget it or something. And he said, even $10, even if the only thing that you can do is practice that with $10 a month, that is something to start with. That actually starts a habit and a practice, and you'll start to fine-tune it. And before you know it, I mean, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And then to take that savings and be able to, once you have your emergency funds stabilized, maybe you say, actually, now I'm going to take my emergency fund of 6 months or 3 months, and I'm going to start segueing some of that into my retirement fund that I'm going to set up. And that retirement fund will do its own building. And there is something that many of the advisors who came and spoke throughout the year talked about, which is that money in the mattress, and I don't have the numbers, but something like $50 in your mattress in 20 years becomes, it's like $35. It loses value because of the way that money goes up. So if you can actually start to work with this savings account and then put it into retirement and start working with how to have that money stay at market value, grow with the way the economy grows, then you're actually not losing money over the long term. And something, yes, Serene.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point about that kind of like money all around the house.
Because I think that's a common philosophy of trying to like just like nestle a little bit of money. But if you were to put it into some sort of a money market or a financial account, that when you need the wash machine, which might be in 2 years, it's going to be able to match the high interest rate, the inflation rate of the wash machine. So in other words, if you have the $200 sitting on top of your washing machine and you can buy a new washing machine for $200 today, in 2 years or 3 years, that same wash machine is going to cost $250 or $240. So you want to kind of have your money, making money to at least match inflation. Because as inflation fluctuates, and we all know with the financial cliff, I mean, inflation is a real indicator of how much that dollar is going to be worth in time. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Winona?
Well, I'm wondering because I was able to save up for a down payment on the house.
Woohoo!
Which also, a down payment on a house, going from very financial sticky situation and huge debt to facing my debt and facing a lot of things, which was terrifying and a lot of tears. But now it's like fun and sexy and a great challenge. And I have a down payment for a house. And but it took a couple years now, but it totally, like, paying off $9,000, like, almost making your goal is amazing, because it's really, it can kill you, that debt. And it's terrifying. Kicked my butt left and right. And so I went to the bank and I wanted to put that money that I had available into some type of savings account that was earning at least a little bit of interest. But she said that the interest rates at the moment were not, they're so low that it doesn't really matter. You should just put it into a regular savings account, because I want to have it accessible if I want to buy a house next week or if I want to buy a house next year. I just want to have it available. So if you're saving money for the potential of your wash machine breaking, where do you put that money so that it's easily accessible?
That was my question too, because there's penalties. I was going to ask you. There's
take it out.
penalties when you take money out early on those other arrangements. So that's where I keep my long-term savings. So when I say that I do the little thing, it was just my own little perk. These are short-term things that I put out there to grab when I need. And then I have the long-term investments and the retirement and that kind of thing, because I don't want to touch it, and I know I can't, and there's a penalty and all that.
Well, that's a really good point. So that's the whole idea about emergency fund, because you might have a house or you might have a car, you might have all kinds of different assets and resources, but those are not fluid. Is that what the word is, the term? Liquid. Liquid. They're not liquid. In other words, it might not sell, it might not, you need to have a certain amount of liquid cash that's immediately available to you so you can do what you need to do with it. So that's one of the basic ideas of the emergency fund and savings account like that.
I'm not plugging any of this, but I refinanced my mortgage, and I discovered that Lee Bank, if you have a checking account there and you have one payment that is automatically deducted and use the debit card 12 times a month, you get 2.5% interest.
On what?
On whatever the amount is. If you
What
have
bank?
$10,000,
Lee.
2.5% interest if you have $200.
Checking or savings?
Checking.
Self-employed.
Yeah, it's really easy.
Yeah, and alternatively, I mean, there are mutual funds that are fairly safe, like, what is it, dividend growth kinds of things, that are, safe investments if you're concerned about volatility.
And also, like Vanguard, at one point we were talking about, takes small amounts. You can put small amounts in them. They don't require big chunks. And I read an article in some magazine about Vanguard that they really have a good reputation over a long period of time.
And their costs are very low.
It's more of an investment. You do an investment, a kind of a retirement investment opportunity. because they're different. That's something where you're putting it in and you don't take it out, right? Which means it's not liquid, and that's more of the retirement, long-term planning.
But you can put money in safe mutual funds and take it out, you know.
What's the best liquid place to put?
Well, you know, what some of the gentlemen here from AIER said was just savings account, it just needs to be available. It needs to be completely ready and available. It doesn't matter that you're losing whatever, it's got 1 point or something. That is about a basic stability, right? So, now, okay,
and that's the thing about like shopping around, like your bank, I would have said to your bank, okay, this, you know, I think I can find another place that'll at least give me 1.5% or 2% interest on money that I know that I'm not going to touch over the next couple months. So I think we all have to be a little bit savvy about really shopping around for those things that, you know, are like no load mutual funds or no fee, you know, all those things that are no early fees. You can really get kind of savvy about finding a place to make sure your money is always growing. Because inflation is always happening. It's not, we live in an inflation-rich economy.
And again, I'm going to just kind of start to segue us in because we're coming to the close here, and Winona's going to share something with us, and I want to reiterate the signing up for the QuickBooks and a couple of things. But the great thing, and again, just to keep on selling and advocating for doing the numbers, crunching the numbers, is that once you're related to a specific number, one, it's easier to save that amount. Two, you could relate to it. It's like, this is the amount. It's, you know, you have your fixed amounts versus kind of vague wave stuff, and then before you know it, you've gone out and spent $200 on a wonderful yada yada, and then you're like, oh, right? So it's getting very precise, again, mastery. And also, it allows, once you have this interesting number, it also, if you're a self-entrepreneur or you're a business owner, it gives you a real sense of, too, oh, I want to generate, like you said, I want to generate, you know, $500 more a month. That's going to take, you know what, I'm going to grow an extra bed of vegetables because I can sell that there. Or, you know, I want $1,000 more because that's going to, that will do my, I want to put that all into savings. Oh, that's going to be 5 more clients. Okay, now I'm on the mission. I know there's some kind of preciseness, right? You're going to lean into it, and then you have a goal, and it's very achievable that way. Versus, I kind of want to just make some more money, and I need to, you know, which again, it takes the vagary out of it. So that's another great reason, is because not only in terms of allowing you, once you do the budget, to really start fine-tuning where you're going to save. Like, oh my gosh, I saved that much on food out? Woo! Time to get cooking, right? Or, you know, to look at where the savings can really happen, and then also to be inspired by what is it going to take to generate that extra? How much do you want to generate, so you can start to lean into building your business? Or, and again, read the handouts, because some of you may be employed and have a job, and you might also look at, well, what can I do on the side? Or what hobby or creative thing do I have that would generate an extra, you know, $200 a month just because I'm doing something I love, right? That becomes a creative way to start building that. Now, on top of it, of course, so what I love that's happening is this kind of resource sharing, right? We want to keep on doing this. Like, now we know something about Lead Bank. Now we know something about coming to your house when we're in a time of need. No, just kidding. Right? We're actually gonna have resources of QuickBooks to get tutorials. And actually, how that happened, and why I even got interested in that, was because Claire said, "Do you know of anybody who can help me with QuickBooks?" And I said, "Okay, let's figure that out." Right? So that we become a real network of sharing opportunity. And one of the beautiful things that is when we start to think about money as a flow of energy and commerce and exchange, that as we as a network of women in a local area can start to really focus on using each other, not outsourcing. How can I not outsource? How can I buy something locally? How can I, you know, is there a way to get this that's going to support a local business? That actually becomes more wealth in our community. That means that woman will have the opportunity to go for a massage to that body worker, who will then go out and decide she can afford your CSA, who can then decide that she wants to get tutored in an entrepreneurial practice, right? it creates the flowing economy. So that's the bigger picture of what we're trying to create here. And so I love that we're starting the conversation.
Is there a resource list from this group?
Let's start one. So,
that would be so good.
right? So let's.
I will say what helped me spend the $9,000 thing is last summer I did catering, and I said
I don't like catering, but all of the catering money, I said, if I'm working just for money, because I don't love catering, all the catering money I do, and I don't cook, I just was serving like at weddings and parties and stuff, it's going toward this debt. So when I got that money, it immediately went to debt. So I had a goal, and I said, okay, and then I'm going to do this to meet that goal. And I would drive to my catering jobs and go, "Oh, I'm just going to pay down this debt."
Right.
It was a set. It was a set plan.
Yeah.
So I will say that because you said if you get a part-time job, it's like I don't want to cater, but I want to pay down my debt.
Right. It helps to prioritize how we're making these choices. Laura, you had something to say.
I was just going to say that the reason I got connected was because Melissa and I met to trade vegetables for her wedding for financial advice for me. So that was a piece of the, and then she told you.
Yeah, and so, I mean, and it taps into barter culture too, which is very powerful. There's something really beautiful. And when we start looking at value and express value, I mean, this is a deeper conversation, right? Because there's money as a value and a utility, and then there's the other things like community and your time and the quality of life that you have and choices that we make that are part of our value set that we want to have expressions of our lives. And so it's this balance between, you know, exchanging our resources, our skills, and then building our finances so that we have finances to spend and share amongst ourselves. And I mean, money is a profound thing. Yes?
I'm just wondering if there's a way, we've had so many women involved in so many of these events, which has been so exciting, and to hear from people and what they know and, you know, getting to know who we all are. I just feel that, you know, you talked a little bit about networking. I'm wondering if even online we could begin to create a little profiles and networks and what I'm willing to barter, what am I willing to, what can I offer, what am I looking for, just something like that, because we haven't had that much opportunity to.
So would Facebook be the best? Facebook would be the best forum for that, right? Yeah.
No, I'm not on Facebook, so.
Yeah, there's got to be somewhere.
Oh, and then we can have a Facebook tutorial or something. But Facebook would be one forum for doing that. And also the networking party will be a first start for that. And then also, because we want to also create a resource list, right? Like here's information.
I can look there first.
Yes.
You can also set it up as private so that
exactly.
you don't feel like you're exposing yourself to what you're needing or wanting.
So that's definitely to be built. And also, so another part is that the more we come together in all different configurations, the more we're just supporting, connected, inspiring, being together on the ship versus kind of struggling on our own, right? So Winona, will you just share a little bit of what you and your very small circle have been doing? You want to maybe come on up and just... Did you bring the book?
I did, actually. Yes. I'll plug it a little bit.
Okay.
So Maya asked me to come and talk. I'm friends with Melissa McGarity, and to talk about a group that I've been working with for almost 7 years now. And it started by, I think I was at a felting class with these two women that I didn't know at all. And they had mentioned that they wanted to do this book called The Artist's Way, which some of you might have heard of, by Julia Cameron. And I had looked at this book so many times, and I got through to the first page, and I'm like, this is so cheesy. I'm not going to do this. But they kind of wanted to do this, and so we got together as a group of 3, and we started doing this book together, which was really great because it was by the week. We would meet every week. We would come together. We would read the chapter through the week, and then come together, read it together again out loud. And I think that kind of came along. We decided that we wanted to recap the whole chapter. So we read it together out loud in a round, and then talked about each week's homework. And there was different things that you had to do. And it was so incredible to have, for one, that I didn't know these women. which was really interesting to do it without having somebody know you already and have a preconceived idea of what you were going through. But also, every week we got together, we set a specific day so that we all were beholden to show up on that day. It wasn't like, let's try to meet on Wednesday or Thursday, and everybody's got such busy lives. And then if somebody couldn't make it, they couldn't make it, and two people would meet. Or, you know, if we really couldn't make it, we might skip the chapter and go to that. But it was so nice to have them, that we were working through this together and hearing different stories happening. And then we moved on to doing another book. We ended up doing every single one of her books and doing The Artist's Way 3 times over the 7 years. And we would go through, 12 weeks, and you'd miss a couple here and there. So we'd go through a couple of months of meeting, and then we would take a break for a little while. And then we'd kind of get together because we'd want to meet once a week again to kind of go over things. But we refined it into, because you're busy and you don't want to take up a ton of your time, and this is really productive time. It wasn't just hangout time. And so we refined it to daily, the check-in, the weekly check-in. So you set the timer for 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes check-in to go over the week, and then you go over then you read the book, and then you go over the homework. And it's been amazing to have them as a support system, because at any time I know that they know exactly where I'm at, that I can email them, I can call them if I'm having a freak out about something that's not working, or suggestions about, look, I'm writing this letter to this client and it's not working, and how can I send this out, and they'll refine it for me or give me ideas. So to have that backup system, so you don't have to feel like you're doing it by yourself, and to see how they have progressed in their lives because of this. And I can totally say I would not be half of where I am right now without these ladies saying, yes, go for it, just be brave, do it. I'll call them on the phone and saying, I'm calling a client now, and I just need to tell you that I am, and I'm calling them. And they'll be like, great, go ahead. And then I'll call my client, and then I will call them back and say, okay, call them. And it's amazing to have somebody that you're accountable to.
1 minute, Winona. 1 minute, because we're over time.
So anyway, the latest book that we went to was just, we did this book because I found that having something that you work on helps to really focus the group and make it really strong. And so this book, The Energy of Money, which is kind of also in that 12-week, it's almost like a 12-step program, and it really is from the bottom up and gives you a lot of structure. Was wonderful, and I just wanted to.
Who wrote that?
It is Maria Namath. Maria Namath, The Energy of Money. It was incredible, and I think that what was so incredible about this, and in all the work that we did, even with The Artist's Way, is that it breaks down your structures of knowing, because we have these limiting beliefs that we have instilled in us, and you kind of have to crash that all apart and do it, but do it really gently, because it actually is some pretty heavy-duty stuff that you're dealing with, your family, of how you were brought up. And just in the accounting and in budgeting, there's, if you count for a couple months without any judgment to that counting, so that you can actually just see what you are spending right now and then refine it to a budget, that's really helpful. Closing all the leaks, so that you're not just about making money, but also you're getting rid of all the bad habits and closing all the things that are just leaking money, the setting life's intentions and standards of integrity, so that you know how you want to be earning money. And I think that's it.
Great. Great.
Thank you.
Maria Namath.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry that we're stretching the time here. So the idea is that if you're inspired, because again, doing this on our own can be tedious or we avoid it. But if you are desired to be in some kind of a 3 to 4 person little group that will either take on this book or another book, that will take on your budgeting practices, that will take on heroically saving and making a difference. I mean, I would say probably your victory, Winona, around having a down payment for your house now coming out of your business is part and parcel of you kind of focusing at this level with that kind of support. So if you're interested in being part of a little support module, again, we'll keep it really small because it needs to be easy to manage and you need to be able to meet for short amount of times and read a chapter and bust through it and get through, then there's also a sign-up sheet for that. So there's 2 things on your way out that 3 things. Your feedback form to let us know how we did and what we need to, where we're going. Enjoy this packet, look through it all. There's also a little checklist to have you start getting related to things that you might not even know that you have to think about. Okay, there's a wonderful checklist that Melissa made a copy of. So fill out that feedback form, and then if you want to sign up for the QuickBooks tutorial, again, this is a mind-blowing deal. I'm going to do it, I think. I have to figure out if it's going to be applicable for me, or Quicken, something like that. Then I will put the sign up, it'll be right outside. Or if you want to be part of a little module that's going to take on, this won't be the artist's way, this is going to be really around financial empowerment, to get the finances awesome, to make the breakthroughs around your business, to account, to do your budgeting, to take on, like we've all 3 budgeted the heck out of it for 3 months and this is how much we're saving and like that, right? And we'll have those little modules will come and report back to the larger circle. Okay, and then it also is very clear that everybody's interested in more resource sharing, to have this be an economic forum, which is basically ways to transact our economy. Yes, somebody's hand was up.
Me?
Oh, Karen.
I'm very interested in these little small module things, but I think there's certain ways that I think would work best for me. Like I'm wondering if there would be some way of sorting this out. And I don't know I don't know what your thinking was in terms of how to form these modules or whatever.
Well, it's powerful when you actually just are in a group, like Winona said, she didn't know these women, right? Or you could take the idea and just say, well, I got 2 of my friends, and now we're a little group, and we're designing it this, and we're actually, going to take on that book because we think it's a great idea as a place to start. And then you can bring those ladies, and they can come and join the party, right? So there's yes. Does that answer your question?
I didn't know if you had knowledge of, in other words, getting back to that whole sort of profile thing. If I'd probably prefer to work with people I didn't already know.
Right.
It'd be kind of interesting. I probably prefer to work with people who are somewhat similar in terms of what my, my profile is or what I'm looking for, so you compare notes. But
okay, so maybe with the signing up for the QuickBooks tutorials will start within a month. This other small group might take a little bit longer, and maybe the way for whoever signs up, I'll send out a little survey monkey or something. Yeah. And you say, yes, this is something. Maybe
some feedback about what you like.
Yeah, or we might just toss 3 names and say, hey, give it a try.
We have a 50-something-year-old and a 20-something-year-old and all different things. And it's kind of like interesting in 2 artists and a designer and a writer. So it's kind of...
Yeah, everybody brings a different little nuance to it, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's good to have it.
Yeah?
I just had to say, I have to just do a little plug. I've actually been leading a group of the Artist Way, and we're going to be doing another one starting in June, and it's at Lifeworks Studio, the new studio in Great Barrington. There's no sign yet, but it's where the hydroponic supply used to be, across from the train station. Yeah. And it's not on the website right now, but it's lifeworks.com. It's life-works.com. And we'll have the studio. My name's Lori Coyle, so we'll be doing one, probably starting in June. Interested in joining a larger, it'll be not 3 people.
Right, a bigger. Right. No, great.
I have to say it's an amazing synchronistic thing for me because I just finished the artist thing last week with a group down in Connecticut. And I've been familiar with her book for 20 years, but never resonated with it. And I just did it in the last couple of months, and it's really transformed.
Yeah.
And now our group is ongoing. Our teachers leaving, so we're going to keep meeting once a month. So I really highly recommend it.
Any other questions or a last-minute urgent need to say something?
If anybody wants to learn about QuickBooks before a month, I'm available and I have business cards.
Right. Yes. Yes, and Laura's, Eve left her cards out there. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. It was great. We really got into a conversation. Okay, we're building. It's a building process.